Okay, just think about this for a second. For most of human history, our absolute greatest invention was a sharp rock on a stick. Today, we're walking around with supercomputers in our pockets. So, how in the world did we get here? We're about to break down that whole incredible journey into 5 massive, world-changing leaps.
I mean, this is the big question, right? The gap between a sharpened stick and a smartphone, it just seems impossibly wide. But here's the thing, it wasn't one giant jump. It was a whole series of profound shifts that completely remade our world over and over again.
And you can really break that whole story down into 5 distinct chapters. 5 revolutionary moments where new tech and new ways of living just completely rewrote the rulebook for society. So, let's start the journey.
Now take a look at this timeline for a second. What's absolutely wild is the pacing. For hundreds of thousands of years, almost all of human history, we were hunter-gatherers. But then, look at what happens. The gaps between each leap just shrink and shrink and shrink until these massive revolutions are happening within a single lifetime. The pace of change itself has been speeding up like crazy.
So let's rewind all the way back to the beginning, with the longest-running show in human history, the era of the first nomads.
For a quarter of a million years, this was it. This was the human experience. We lived in these small, family-like groups, and we were always on the move, just following the food. Your entire life was dictated by the seasons and where the animals were. Survival wasn't just a job, it was the only job.
And you know, this kind of life led to something pretty amazing, a society of equals. The reason is actually really simple. When you're always on the move, you can't have a lot of stuff. And if you can't pile up possessions, you can't really accumulate wealth or power over others. It made these groups the most egalitarian societies we've ever had.
But then, about 12,000 years ago, everything, and I mean everything, changed. The first big shakeup happened when humans finally figured out how to control their own food supply, and that led to the very first settlements. And this happened in 2 main ways, kind of at the same time. You had horticultural societies, which used simple tools like hoes to grow their own crops. This meant they could finally stay in one place. Then you had pastoral societies, who started raising and herding animals. They were still a bit nomadic, always looking for fresh pastures, but now they were taking their food source with them. And this right here, this is a crucial turning point. Because for the first time ever, humanity had a food surplus. Not everyone had to spend every waking moment looking for the next meal. And that surplus created a brand new, totally revolutionary concept, wealth. For the first time, you could actually own more than your neighbor. And this right here was the very beginning of social inequality.
This idea of surplus and ownership, well, it set the stage perfectly for the next great leap, which kicked off about 5,000 years ago. And this wasn't just a step forward, it was a total reinvention of civilization as we know it.
It was all driven by a handful of truly world-changing inventions. The plow, especially, was a complete game changer. Suddenly, you could farm on a scale that was just unimaginable before. You combine that with a wheel for moving things around and writing and numbers to keep track of it all, and society could now grow exponentially.
But this massive growth came with a massive social cost. The chain reaction is crystal clear. The plow creates this huge surplus, which makes land the ultimate source of wealth. This gives rise to a powerful new class of landowners, and for the very first time society splits, hard, into the haves and the have-nots. The deep economic divides that still shape our world today, they were born right here, in these fields. And this era also cemented deep gender inequality. Because men typically performed the heavy labor of plowing, they controlled the main source of wealth, the fields. This gave them all the public and economic power, while women's roles became more and more confined to the household, to the private sphere. Okay, so for thousands of years, that agricultural model was basically the only game in town. Then, in the 1700s, boom, everything changed again. We entered the age of the machine, where steam and later electricity replaced the power of human and animal muscle.
The Industrial Revolution was a total double-edged sword. On one hand, the progress was incredible. We got better healthcare, we lived longer, and for the first time, that rags-to-riches dream of social mobility was actually possible. But on the other hand, it created a whole new set of problems. Horribly overcrowded and polluted cities, more impersonal relationships, and yeah, weapons with terrifying destructive power.
And that brings us to the leap we are all living through right now. Starting in the late 20th century, the economy's center of gravity just shifted. It moved away from producing physical goods, atoms, to creating and managing information, or bits.
This is just such a perfect way to grasp the shift, isn't it? The car, a masterpiece of industrial manufacturing that defined the 20th century. The smartphone, a device for processing and sharing information, defines the 21st. It's a fundamental shift from mechanical power to processing power.
And of course, this completely changed the nature of work itself. Those factory jobs that were the backbone of the industrial economy, they started to decline. And they were replaced by jobs in service industries, in software, in technology. The assembly line gave way to the algorithm.
And you guessed it, this revolution created its own new form of inequality. The Great Divide today isn't just about owning land or factories anymore, it's about knowledge. The new haves are the folks with the education and the digital skills to thrive in this information economy, and that's leaving a growing gap between them and the have-nots.
So there you have it. From egalitarian nomads to the digital divide. We've seen how every great leap forward solves some old problems, but it always seems to create new forms of inequality. And it leaves us with a really critical question. If the information age created the digital divide, what divide will the next revolution, whether it's AI or biotech or something we can't even imagine yet, what will it create for the world we leave behind?